Welcome back to Church Chats. We are back with DeAndrea Dare, and now I want to talk a little bit about A Memory Grows. If you've been a member or a visitor of First United Methodist Church of Fort Worth over the last few years, and you've been involved in VBS, you may have heard of A Memory Grows. Because every year at VBS, there's funds that are raised, that all the kids raise money through. They'll buy cards, like little cards of, it's almost like baseball cards, or that they trade, or they get everybody to sign it. It's got like, what was
the VBS characters?
Yeah, what was Lance a couple of years? Lighthouse Lance.
Lighthouse Lance, yeah.
And then there's Foggy, that was the Discovery on Adventure Island.
Yeah.
Mike Marshall was
Foggy,
and he was always lost. Yeah. Anyway, so those cards, we make those cards, and then the kids buy them. They can get 10 for $10. And so they raise all these funds, and then the Super Sixers, which are our sixth graders who are heading out. They're super. They are super. They're heading out, and they won't be coming to VBS the next year, but this is their last year at VBS. They do lots of mission work during the week because they're older and it's not all the little kid stuff. But they decide what nonprofits that this money is delegated to. And Mark will go in and he'll explain what each one of these nonprofits does, and how they support people, support the community. And the last 2 years, A Memory Grows has been chosen. The Super Sixers hear about what A Memory Grows does, and the last 2 years they said, we have to give to A Memory Grows. So with that, if you've a little bit of backstory on where you may have heard of A Memory Grows, now let's hear it from DeAndrea. Tell us about A Memory Grows, your son Max, and how this all came about.
Okay. Well, I call it the greatest adventure that I've ever been on. That I never wanted to go on. And so Max is my son. My husband Aaron and I have 2 daughters and 1 boy. And Max is our son, who would be 10 years old if he was here with us today. He was stillborn in 2013 due to some complications that happened while I was in the hospital waiting for him to be born. And I have always been a very positive, kind of energetic, optimistic person. And when Max died, I went into a hole, went down into a pit that I'd never been in before. I thought things that I'd never thought before. I didn't know how I could continue to live, why I was able to survive, why they saved me, but yet they couldn't save him. So had lots of stuff going on, and was going down a path that really wasn't going to be good for anybody if I kept going down that path. And so it was a few months after Max died that Aaron and I went to a place in Wisconsin that at the time was the only organization of its kind in the United States for parents whose children had died. And so we went to a retreat there with 4 other couples, and we found a safe spot where that was the first place that I laughed again. It was the first place where I recognized just a little piece of DeAndrea was still way down in there. And when we left, I said, one of these days we really should do something like that down in Fort Worth, because this was in Wisconsin, and so we had to fly into Minneapolis, St. Paul, rent a car, drive 2.5 hours, turn down this gravel dirt road that looked like we were leading into The Shining, and then this beautiful place emerges, which in itself is kind of a metaphor, going down this bumpy gravel road surrounded by trees, and then breaks forth into this place of hope. And so I was in no place mentally, physically, spiritually at all to do anything at that time. But that little seed had kind of been planted in the back of my mind. Like, Dallas-Fort Worth would be a much easier place to get to, and maybe one day we could do something like that here. And so right around the time of Max's 2nd birthday, I was walking down the road with some church members, because I was serving another United Methodist congregation at the time, and we were all talking, and we had been down to the Jewish synagogue and had been doing a joint mission project. And one of the ladies said, DeAndrea, and the tone had been very upbeat and, happy and good and everything. She said, DeAndrea, we just got back from this mission trip. And I said, oh yeah, and I heard it was great. And she said, so-and-so's sister was there, and she's a licensed counselor. And I said, oh, I didn't know that. And she said, and so one night we had a session about you.
Oh.
And I thought, oh, and I just kind of braced myself, because I had a sense that where this was going was probably not going to be the easiest of, and I just said, oh, and I didn't run away like I wanted to, but she goes, it's been almost 2 years and you still say his name. And I just kind of took a deep breath, and I said, I'll always say his name because he's my son, and I will forever say his name. And thankfully there was a lady on this side of me that grabbed my hand and it's still and squeezed my hand like, I got you. You're not by yourself. And so I went home that night, and I said to Aaron, I think it's time. I think it's time to do something different, because it was tough to grieve and find your way in life in front of a lot of people watching you, and had an incredible amount of support, but also the louder voices are sometimes those that like to speak things like, it's been 2 years, and so now it's been 10.
Right.
And I still say it.
And we're still talking about Max.
And we're still talking about Max. Yeah. So a Memory Grows came forth from that. I took a leave of absence from the church, figured out how in the world do you start a nonprofit, because I did not know, and tried to find if there would be support in the Dallas-Fort Worth community for something like this. And so it was November of that following year, or of that year, that we launched A Memory Grows with the very first ceremony of remembrance. And then that next year started offering retreats, and we've now offered 31 retreats.
Wow.
And people have come from 17 different states and Canada, and our online presence has a larger reach even from that with our online support groups. So it's been a tremendous adventure, a beautiful and sacred journey, and one that, I'd give up any minute, if life was different. But
tell us about these retreats that you say you've done 31 of them now at this
31.
point. What happens at these retreats, and what kind of activities do you do? What happens?
So the retreats they're a little hard to explain, in the sense that we bring together 6 to 8 families, and when we say families, that means the parents of a child, and that can be a mom that comes alone, a dad who comes alone, or both parents or partners that come together. And so we have 6 to 8 families that come. The first 30 retreats were held at a bed and breakfast. We rent out the entire facility. So even where we do our retreats now, it's a 40-acre estate east of Dallas. And so we're the only ones on the property. So we set up a very safe space where people can be authentically who they are. And the most beautiful thing that happens that is not controllable at all, and is nothing that we do, that just happens, is that people look physically different from when they arrive on Thursday to when they leave on Sunday. And I think that is just because they have found that safe space where they can talk about their child. Everybody there wants to hear, and everybody there wants to share their child. And so you can talk, you can ask questions, you can cry, you can laugh, you can do it all in the same sentence, and nobody judges you. Nobody says things like, it's been 2 years, would you just stop? Yeah.
And they know that coming in, that you're an organization, this retreat is somewhere I'm not going to hear that.
Yeah.
I can feel safe. I can open up here.
Yeah. And, and I think that we do a lot of talking. I think a lot of people think we wear black and we, like, rip our clothes and sing Kumbaya or something the whole time with Kleenex just all over.
Wait,
and,
you don't?
We don't. We don't. No,
Oh,
we don't.
man.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, but that's not me. But we do a lot of hands-on, tactile kind of things. It's not about what we do so much as in the doing brings out the stories. And brings out the talking. And then when they're done, they say and see, like, oh my gosh, I just did this thing in memory of my child that I didn't think I could do. Yeah. And sometimes they'll go, oh my gosh, I'm not crafty. And I'm like, none of us are crafty here. We're just doing this stuff, and we break the moms and dads into different groups sometimes. We go outside and do things outside. We bring in an artist who helps create a painting that incorporates the children into the painting.
For each retreat?
For each retreat.
Yeah.
The licensed professional counselor comes in on Saturday afternoons and just has, it's not a therapy session because some people are real comfortable with therapy, some are not at all.
Yeah.
And it's just a group conversation about grief and relationships because grief touches every single relationship that's a part of our life. And so how do we continue the relationship with our child who has died, as well as how do we build that relationship between our spouses, our living children, our in-laws, our co-workers, our neighbors, all of that. And so we touch upon all of those different things. So so that's just a little bit about what we do. We eat a lot.
Well, hey.
We eat a lot.
I mean,
someone once wrote a thank you note and said, thank you so much for giving me great food to eat my feelings.
Well, yeah. That's a good place to start. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as far as when you first started, was it very specific to infant loss?
It was infant and older child loss.
Okay.
So,
but since it's evolved.
It has evolved.
Into more.
It has evolved. So, we started small in the sense of 4 retreats in a year. And that in the beginning, 3 of those were infant loss and 1 was older child loss. And then every year we have added on something additional. And so we also offer now suicide loss, pediatric cancer loss, adult child loss, sudden loss, and last year we added in homicide loss. And so the retreat format is the same, but depending on the type of loss and the level of trauma that has been endured, we focus the conversations in different ways. So,
well, and then so those are the retreats. But then there's also the service of remembrance that happens every November, and this is where you bring everybody who's participated in a retreat. Is it this year and other years?
Yeah.
So anybody's invited who's been on a retreat before?
Well, anybody's invited.
Well, sure.
Yeah, anybody. So
all are welcome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and a lot of times so the ceremony of remembrance always happens the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So it lands between like the holiday season, the kickoff of the holiday season, and it's just a time to come together and remember. And so it's a candlelight service held in an open air chapel. And there's beautiful music by yours truly,
so
Clint Church, except for when he doesn't show up.
Except for when I don't That's right.
Yeah, some kind of excuse.
I
just
ghost her. I say, yeah, I'll be there, and then I just don't show up. No, it's been one of the joys of the last 5 or 6 years to be a part of that, and talk about God working in the background. When you and I met at a lunch when I was a kid, when I was 2.
Yes.
But it's such a moving experience, and just to be able to play a small part in it, and I know everybody else feels that way too. I mean, everybody who is, at the retreats or who are part of the support system that's there for these families. It's sacred, holy ground to be at these places and to be grieving alongside these families, and so I anyway. So go ahead.
Well, no, sorry. So the ceremony of remembrance is open to anybody, and our retreats are just for parents.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And we do the 4-day retreats, and then we do our 1-day retreat just for mothers, leading up to Mother's Day.
So like siblings and grandparents and all that. That's what the services of remembrance.
Yeah. So the special events, especially the ceremony of remembrance, is for grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, close friends. Okay. They can all come together and have a time of community remembrance. And that's also one of the places where we have found that people will enter kind of into a memory grows easily, because sometimes a 4-day retreat seems so big and daunting, especially when you don't know who is this person named DeAndrea Dare that's going to be with me for 4 days talking about grief.
Right.
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. And so
it's a big step for anybody. Yeah.
And so coming into this ceremony where you're in a room full of other people who have all experienced the death of a child at some age, at some stage, you have that sense of, safety. Like, okay, I'm not just going to be the one crying here, and you can come in and then you can release your lantern under the water. And if you choose, you can go to your car and go home, or you can come to the reception, and meet other people, and so it's kind of a softer, kind of gentle way.
You're
to
asking
see,
for 2 hours
and
not 4 days.
What is this thing all about?
Yeah.
And am I ready for this?
Right. Well, talk more about we'll talk more about the lanterns in a bit. But more recently, we did a service of remembrance down in Uvalde after the massacre at Robb Elementary. And tell us about how that came about, because, I mean, obviously it's national news for however, or worldwide news for that matter. And so, I would assume that it was difficult to not gain access, or like, I'm sure there are people who want to take advantage of the situation and don't want to actually help. How did it come about that A Memory Grows was able to be that support for these families? And tell us about tell us about that specific service of remembrance.
Well, so when May 24th, 2022 happened, which is when the Robb Elementary massacre happened, I just felt it deep in my bones that we needed to respond. And I remember getting the alert on my phone, and I remember, watching some news reports, and I got on my computer and wrote our board of directors. And I said, this is just a little over 5 hours away. This is here, this is, lots of elementary school children whose parents just sent them to school, and they're going to need support. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how we're going to get there, but will you support me in doing this? And they wrote back unanimously, all, absolutely, 100%, it's time for us to do this. And we were adding in the homicide retreats then anyway, so it was kind of a natural progression. And I knew that even back when the Pulse shooting happened in Orlando, the club shooting, I knew that one day we would do something like this, because it's becoming so much more prevalent. And every time I hear of somebody's name on the news, I think there's parents who are grieving their child, and so and how can we be there for them? And so right about that time, I received the email from the church that was talking about. I think it came from either Mr. Mark or from the general church email. I don't remember which one, but saying that that Kyle Wagner was from Uvalde, and that the church was going to begin to work towards supporting that community. And so I had A Memory Grows is one of the nonprofits, the Kindness Duck Project, which Kyle and Cy Wagner from here at the church have founded. And they had kind of embraced the mission of A Memory Grows. And so I wrote them and said, you know, I know now is not the time because it's too raw. It's, you know, it just happened. Right. But somewhere down the road, I would love to be a part of offering support in whatever ways that A Memory Grows can. Knowing that that was kind of a pipe dream in a way, you know, because I always feel like there are other people that could step in with more resources and do things easier and, you know, better than my little ideas that I come up with. And so
come on.
No, I mean that's really the way I feel. And so we just kind of waited, and I kept saying, like, I just send Kyle a message.
Like, hey,
just want you know, I'm still thinking, you know, just thinking about, you know, I was like, maybe around the holidays or something. And so, anyway, I ended up going to Uvalde for the first time last September. Mr. Mark went along, and Kyle and another group, Building Wishes, are putting together something, and they invited me to go along and to talk about, kind of be a resource to talk about the thought processes of parents whose children have died and things that go through our heads, and how small little things like a playground structure where you can't see your child could be a very you know, triggering thing because you can't see them and what's happening right there, you know, and if your child went to school and didn't come home, if you can't see them in that small area, and just to talk through those things. And so I'm sure they got sick of me because I kept saying, have you talked to the parents about this? Have you talked to the parents about this? Have you talked to the parents about this? And so in October, we had a dinner with the parents, and they once again included A Memory Grows, and that's where they talked about their plans and their projects, which I'm hoping you'll do a podcast on another time.
Sure.
But, and then I was able to introduce A Memory Grows and my story, and tell them a little bit about Max. And I said, you know, I'm just here. And I said, they're here to tell you about this and about, you know, building this thing that they're going to do and everything. And I said, I can't even build anything with Legos. So I said, I'm not able to do that. But what I can do is I can sit with you, and I want to hear your child's story. You know, I want to hear, you know, what they used to like to do. I want to see their TikTok videos. I want to, you know, and I said, I just, you know, that's the only reason, no agenda. I'm just here for you to talk to if you want to. And so from that night, little by little, connections started to be made, and I started hearing stories. And I asked them, when that night ended, I said, would something around the holidays be helpful? Because every conversation I had at the table that night was, Halloween's coming up. We don't know what we're going to do. We don't know what we're going to do for Thanksgiving. We don't even want to think about Christmas. You know, and so I said to the whole group, would something that, you know, before the holidays be helpful? And they all nodded their head. And I thought, well, okay.
There's a sign.
Okay, we'll be back. And I, you know, I promised. I said, we'll be here as long as you want us to be, in whatever form it can be helpful. And you know, but in a traumatic situation like that, you don't know what's up or down. You don't know what can be helpful or not. But yeah, the ceremony that we had that you went along for in December, we did a ceremony of remembrance there with a chapel service. We had a catered meal. Mark went and had this incredible children's area where the kids
he was just playing with all the kids
doing his thing, which is amazing. And I was so proud. Clint went to provide the music. Many of our board of directors went. Kyle Wagner went. And it was one of my most proud moments that I looked around that dinner, and everybody was seated at a table talking to the families
Yeah.
about their kids. And I was like, that is what this is about.
Yeah.
It's not, we're not here for a story. We're not here to sensationalize anything. We're not here to push any kind of agenda. We just want them to know that they are loved, that their children's stories matter, and that their legacies will continue in whatever way that they choose to share them with the world, And so, so then we had that ceremony, and you stood at the front of that room and sang, facing the chapel that was standing room only, where you could see their faces. And I was just up and down, saying things and primarily looking over everyone's heads so that I wouldn't lose it. But it was a powerful, sacred time. And then we went outside and did the lanterns. So.
Yeah, it was, and from, like you said, I remember at the time thinking that I have to just sing the songs. It's so often, at funerals, every funeral I get choked up at all the time. And most of the services of remembrance, I'll get choked up. And so I always have to tell myself, I just sing the song. You are here to sing a song and not crack. Your voice can't crack. But that was about as hard as I've ever had to try not to. And it was just such a, I can't even put into words. I felt God's Spirit in that room, and just holding these families and these siblings who lost their brother or their sister, and it was so tough, but one of the honors of my life to be able to do that.
Oh.
So, but I will say too that the other thing that happened, and it happens at all the retreats, as DeAndrea said, is the lanterns. So at the wood, what's the one in Weatherford called?
The Brooks at Weatherford.
The Brooks at Weatherford. That's where all the normal services of remembrance are. There's a little pond, and what we'll do is we will everybody gathers around the pond, right? And they light the lantern. They put the lantern into the pond as they say their child's name. And so this time in Uvalde, there's a picture of the lantern. Crap. He told me that if I cried, you're going to cry. So I'm sorry. This is the pond out in Uvalde, and
it's actually a river.
Oh, it's a river.
Because
okay.
we could not retrieve the lanterns, so this one they actually truly floated.
Oh, we didn't get to retrieve them?
They're biodegradable.
That's right, they were biodegradable.
They're biodegradable.
Okay, gosh.
That's what the packaging said.
Well, yeah, we always trust packaging, right?
To make you laugh.
Thank you. That helps. The lanterns took this formation, and I'll tell you, DeAndrea, I've said before too. I think about things. I have doubts about things, faith, the afterlife, all of that. A lot of the time, I don't know what's going to happen after we die. I think lots of people are so certain. so often it's like, I'm going to meet St. Peter, and then Jesus is going to come in, and we're going to go have a party.
And the streets are gold.
And the streets
like
are gold.
This.
Yeah.
Like,
the gold mines, exactly.
It's a preview.
And I always feel so uncomfortable in that situation because I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea what it's going to be like, and I'm skeptical anytime I hear of supernatural things happening. But this picture was taken by one of the board members, I think. Was it Shannon? Did Shannon take this?
I can't remember who took it, but yeah.
But somebody took this photo, and then we were all looking at it, and somebody said, look, they're the two teachers.
Out front.
And all the kids are lining up.
And said it's as straight of a line of fourth graders that you could imagine. And they all floated away like that. Yeah. And it was actually, I think, one of the grandmas that when we released them, they all lingered like right by the bank or the shoreline where we were standing, and they kind of gave them a little push, you know. And the families that weren't there, one of the beautiful things I thought is that so many of the families that were present called or FaceTimed the other parents so that they could all be a part of this and see that the lantern was going in the water, because there's 21 for the 21 families, and then they went, and it was just silent, and one of the grandmas said, "Well, there goes Eva and Irma, the teachers leading our kids," and I don't think there was a dry eye as we stood there watching them go. And it was the most star-lit sky I had ever seen in my life. You should share that picture.
Yes, yeah. So there's a picture that Allie, I'll get it to you, I promise.
Yeah.
But there's a picture I took on the fancy schmancy new iPhone. You can you can actually get the light. It captures more light than the old ones did. And so when it's super dark, it actually can pull in some of the light. And so I did some adjustments on the phone. I took a shot up of and Uvalde. I mean, it's a little south of San Antonio.
It's rural.
It's rural, yeah.
East.
I mean,
west.
I had never seen so many stars.
I hadn't either.
So, but yeah, we'll get that picture up. It was incredible. But yeah, nights like that, those are the things that give me more hope about God. Yes, I believe in God. I trust in Jesus, that there's some hope after this, but things like that.
Yeah. And I say to people all the time, there are things that I can't explain that happen. One of them is how people somehow look different from Thursday to Sunday when they walk in and when they leave. There's lots of little random things that happen that if you were just somebody that I told a story to, you may think like, yeah, she may not quite be all there.
I think that about you all the time.
That's what I was gonna say. They may actually be quite accurate about that. But things like this, in those moments, I can't explain, and I don't think
it could just be the wind, blowing them down the river and whatever.
Maybe so,
But I don't believe that.
I don't either.
When I look at that photo,
I don't either. And there wasn't any wind that night either. But no, I don't believe that at all. There are things that happen that are grounded in the sacred, and I believe are a tangible, visible sign of God's presence with us. And I have that humble honor, I feel like, of being witness to that. In a lot of ways that I feel like are missed, especially when our society is getting better at facing grief, handling grief, processing grief, but we've still kind of got a long way to go with being present with grief.
Right.
And
not feeling uncomfortable with it to where you run away from it.
And so to just be able to, number one, I'll have these families invite us to come back was huge. But to stand there with them and just be in what I believe is holy ground, to see something like this happen, when I think, we would miss that sometimes because we're just so busy or caught up with other things, and we don't take time to say, tell me about Alithia. Why did she want to go to Paris to art school, or what's your favorite drawing that she did, or tell me about Xavier and his funny dances, and things like that. We miss their lives, and it's an absolute horrible tragedy that their lives and that the lives of any child or out of order death happens. But my gosh, their story is not over, and their story needs to be shared. And we all carry stories within us from generations ago. And so little by little, I hope that A Memory Grows is both being present with the families and also touching upon the ways that we can be present with one another and the ways that we're truly interconnected, even though we don't want to talk about things like death and dying.
Well, and you say that their memory grows. It goes on, and I think about Max, and I think about what A Memory Grows has turned into, and how he has reached these families and these people, and how out of that hole that you were in, that something so beautiful can come out of it, and it's just inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He's a special little guy. I'm proud to be his mom.
Yeah. Trying to think if we should talk about more about that. Allie, how are we doing on time? Are we not great? Okay, so what we're gonna do?
We're gonna have 6 episodes.
Yeah. So what we'll do now, though, is kind of wrap up this portion of our interview with DeAndrea, and maybe we'll have you back at another time too. But you want to say anything about A Memory Grows, where people can learn more about it, or
Sure.
just the website? You just send them to the website.
Yeah. You can
How
find
about your
us.
cell phone number? You
Yeah.
want to get that out?
Yeah. Yeah. A Memory Grows. amemorygrows.org on the internet, or you can find us on Instagram or Facebook. I do not tweet.
You don't tweet? What about your
tweet.
TikToks?
I do not TikTok.
No, you don't TikTok.
No,
Okay.
I don't Snapchat either.
Okay, that's okay.
But one day maybe I'll become cool like you.
You just need to hang out with me more.
I
Yeah,
do.
come on.
I do. But
We'll be
yeah.
cool together.
So, but yes, you can find us there, or I'm at church every Sunday.
There you go. You find her in the hallways.
You can usually hear me.
Yes, you're laughing. The very distinct laugh of DeAndrea Dare. I just want to thank you so much for being my friend, first of all, but also joining me on this church chat. Join us for the next one in a little bit. We'll release more episodes eventually. So glad that you're here with us, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for
DeAndrea.
inviting me.
Of course. We'll see y'all next time.